All right, well, welcome everyone to this Fourth Friday. Today we are going to be talking about, now let's go full screen on this. We're going to be talking about, is it good to be a self-taught artist or not? Really what we want to focus on is what are the pros and cons of that? What are the pros and cons of being self-taught versus being mentored or taught? And just to be clear, it doesn't even have to be purely like one-on-one mentorship. You could really encapsulate a little bit into this, the idea of even just going to art school, but that there's somebody else that's like helping train you, right? Versus you trying to figure it all out on your own, right? So we're going to be talking about that today, right? So let's welcome our other panelists. Let's see, we have, let's see, hopefully you guys can see all of us now. So welcome, Mrityunjay, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, yeah, doing well. Diego, how are you?
Hey, how are you guys? So happy to be here again another Friday.
Yeah, so you're down south, so you're going into, you're going to be going into warmer weather, right? Things are
Yeah, I'm
slowly
going
start
into
heating up here.
summer.
Yeah, so interesting. That always blows my mind. You're on the opposite end. So you always have like the holidays in heat.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. There's no snowman here in Christmas.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And how are you doing, Swanley?
Yeah, doing great. Excited for the topic of today.
Yeah, me too. Me too. All right, guys. So the four of us today are going to roundtable through this. We'll be obviously tracking the live chat. We're looking for feedback from you guys as well. If you have any questions, throw them in there or statements. Please feel free. It's open game. We're looking for this to be a very interactive session. It's a pretty important topic, the concept of being self-taught or being mentored or trained with somebody overseeing your education. I think especially nowadays because of the internet, right? I mean, I've done a lot of traveling and teaching around the world, and I've actually seen, I have to say, even some incredible artists out there in the world who just like learned off of YouTube, right? So thank God for YouTube, thank God for the internet, because and we wouldn't be here, right, without it. So I think that's amazing all in itself. All right, so let's get to our deck here. I'll probably bounce back and forth today between the deck and the four of us talking. Let's head back over here. Okay, so here's the topics that we're going to discuss today. We're going to talk about inspiration, right? We're going to start off with what inspires all of us, right? And I want to talk in there about what is good inspiration and potentially bad inspiration. I know those are very sort of judgmental terms, so I'll try to clarify what I actually mean by that. It's almost like the conversation we had about appealing or unappealing art from animation. We're going to talk about speed of learning, like the efficiency and the speed with which you learn. How does that look in being self-taught? How does that look in when you're trained? How to learn. It's one that I think most of us don't really think about that much, but it's one thing to learn, but how to learn. How are you learning when you're being self-taught versus being trained? What to learn and when. That, to me, through the mentorship on drawingforest.com, that's probably one of the major reasons that actually I've seen people come to mentoring is, what to learn and when, right? What is the order with the education? What's the order of the education that I should be being taught, right? And last but not least, this one I would put up right with number 4. Number 5 is knowing when to move forward, right? So, okay, I've been learning, maybe I'm being self-taught, right? And I'm learning online, but I think the big question is, how do I know to move forward, right? How do I know when I'm really ready to go on to the next subject? So these are all the topics we'll talk about today. We're going to try to get through all of these. I'm going to try to flesh out the pros and cons as we go actually through the conversation, so we have a summation at the end of today's session. I'll do my best with that. So let's go on to the first slide, right? First one is inspiration, right? Like, what is good, right? So I'm going to throw that out to the four of us to talk about inspiration. We'll try to take about maybe 5 to 10 minutes on this. So what do you guys thought? What do you guys think about when it comes to the concept of inspiration, right? We have a lot of people that come to us to be trained, and even if they're not coming to us to be trained, what makes for, good inspiration or bad inspiration? You guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think we need to, well, at least I need to make sure everybody knows that this is what we think, right?
It's our
It's
opinion.
I hope it is the truth, but this is what we think. And of course, inspiration is always good. To me, inspiration, if you are feeling inspired by something to do something, that's good. That if there are some inspirations that are going to help you, and some inspiration that make you kind of slow down the process. For example, if you are inspired by a hyper realistic painter and that's your inspiration, you want to go there straight. When you I want to learn how to draw, let's go straight on realism. That's gonna make it harder, really, really harder. So pick your inspiration, but know there's a process to get there.
Yeah, we're back.
What just happened? You're back.
Yeah,
I saw you.
my thing synced out for a second. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, no worries. The thing is that there are good inspiration, and I think all is good, but there are some inspirations that are going to make your process of learning kind of slow. They're gonna put like things in the middle of the road that gonna make you your process of learning really, really, really slow because you're aiming way too high. There's a quote say, "Aim to the moon, and you maybe cross the lake." But the problem here is if you start aiming to the moon, the first time you aim to the moon, your shoulder is gonna hurt a lot. So be careful when you shoot that rock. So that's
Yeah.
my 2 cents on inspiration.
Yeah. I think what I want to clarify with everyone today is what we mean, or what I mean, I should say, by good is skilled, right? Because it's really easy for us to kind of step on people's toes here and say, "Oh, you like that art? Well, that art sucks," right? That's not our point here, right? Everyone has their right to what they're interested in, right? It's like the food you eat, the art you like, the TV shows you watch. I have no right to say, why do you like that TV show? That's terrible, right? That's not the point. What we're talking about is, I think, a place of skill, right? And that's more to me of how I'm judging. I'm judging based on someone who's got skill to draw, and to look at the inspiration that has driven you to be an artist, which is great, right? Like Diego just said, if it inspires you already, that's awesome, right? Because potentially that means that's why you come to us, because you've had your childhood and there's cartoons or comics or whatever it is that's gotten you to say, I really want to be an artist. I want to gain more traction in my skills. I've found in the past, and I do this actually with the people I mentor, I say at the beginning of mentorship, I'll very often say, I'd love for you to put like a love folder and a hate folder together, like artists you love and art that you hate, right? Because I really want to create this polar opposite situation for me to create clarity around understanding where you're at. What is it that you like and what do you not like? And then I have to tread very carefully because I'm not here to hurt your feelings, but I want to look in that artwork and say, I see that you like this. Let's talk about why you like it, because it might actually be something that doesn't have a lot of good skill in it, right? And that happens pretty often. And I'm going to say this, I'm putting myself out here at a high risk of saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Anime and manga, even when I had my school down in Los Angeles, and all the way till today, are two huge driving forces in the United States and around the world for people to be excited about wanting to be an artist. And I don't blame you, right? There's a lot of awesome content in that space, right? That I love as well, okay? But the trick there is differentiating what's sort of skilled, really well skilled. And what I mean by skilled is, in our case, we're talking about what's drawn well or animated well, and what's not, right? And it's fair to say that there's manga, just like American comics, there are manga comics, right? There's manga that's good and there's manga that's not so good. And there's anime that's, amazing. And then there's some that's not so great. So I've seen students come in and point out like certain artists they like, and I'm like, I see that you like this. Maybe the story's really good. Maybe it feels like it's got a lot of force and action in it, but it's not really drawn that well, right? And for me, the other challenge I have with the art of that space is the similarity, right? The lack of contrast across characters faces, right? It's like a very distinct style. Even Disney, I think, is guilty of that to some degree, right? Like fairy princesses for the last 20 years all have like the giant eyeballs and little noses that are upturned, right? Like there's like an aesthetic there. You know, and you want to watch for that. Like it's easy to be enamored, I think, by that, and find that beautiful or interesting or exciting. But it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that's out there. And, you know, it's done well. It could be done even really well, but I feel like it's my responsibility when I have somebody to teach that I show you there's more than just that. Not only more, but also what's good and bad. And what I mean by that is what is skilled and what's not skilled. So the anime manga thing is one of the first things that comes up for me because I've seen that space not be well navigated by artists that are inspired by it, you know. Akira,
again,
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Once again, you need to be aware. Not you. Well, yeah. Everybody needs to be aware of what your goal. Right. You're learning
Yes.
how to
Yes.
draw. What for? What's the objective? If you want to learn and to work in the industry, then you cannot focus on a style. You need to focus on the skills, right? To be able to get hired to draw like I don't know, Batman or SpongeBob, right?
Right.
I was about to say it in Spanish, like Bob Esponja. But yeah, you need to be able to draw like Barney, like Swanley. It's really fun of
Always.
Barney, and you need to be able to draw everything. So that's I think what you're talking about, Mike, right?
Yeah.
Like if you focus on only on manga or anime, you won't be able to like move out of a style, right? Because you have like your skill to draw manga. Then how you move that into Bob Squarespan?
Yeah, to your point, Diego, I think it's the inspiration is not the problem. The problem occurs when you try to duplicate that inspiration without first learning solid drawing skills. You know, if you take an artist who is very good at drawing and designing and they draw manga, it's going to be fantastic. You know, but even for myself, I'm a huge manga and anime fan. And when I was younger, I used to just watch those shows and try to duplicate the drawings, but I never learned how to draw. So they came out looking pretty bad.
Yeah. I talk about inspiration. I look back at some of the artists that inspired me when I was going to school, and I look back at them now and I'm like, not so good, right? Like I can see now all the faults in the drawing. The skill's not as high as I thought it was. And I wasn't mentored. I went to art school, but in mentorship, if I had that, I would have hoped somebody could have pointed that out to me and said, yeah, no, look, I know you really like this. I'm going to train you to be better than this because look, this person is not skilled in this and this and this area. And without mentioning names, there was definitely quite a handful of comic book artists that I was really excited by. And I look back now and I'm like, oh man, like, look at that hand. It's awful. It's just like not drawn well, or things are stiffer than I imagine them being in my mind. When you're younger, your brain is great at I don't know, it's hard to explain. To me, my mind was really great at exploding the fantasy of what I was reading, like really getting involved in what I was looking at. And I think now it's easier for me to kind of step out and look at it and say, oh yeah, that's like totally off. Okay,
Yeah,
so where we left off, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, kind of expanding to that manga thing. I just wanted to like share some experiences that I had in my place in my country. So people were like they're just like trapped in kind of a situation where just like the internet has taken over their minds like so much for the inspiration that they're like kind of bounded by it. So if they were like, yeah, I just like want to look at that artist, like who has like a million followers, his art is so good. I know, and they're literally good. But the thing is, the inspiration is all around you. You don't need necessarily to go there to their pages or something like that, or anything like that. I don't want to say anything bad about anyone, but inspiration is all around you. The thing is that technology has taken so over much like to your mind that people have forget that inspiration is just behind me, or the place where I'm sitting at. And they're like kind of bounded by the visuals of things, right? And especially in my country, in India, there were like people like, no, I just want to become a 3D animator, but I don't want to learn how to draw. And this is like, I hate this kind of thoughts with them. Okay, because
Right.
animation is animation. It doesn't matter, it's a 3D or stop motion or a classical animation. You need to know how to draw and become in process of becoming a better 3D animator, right? So yeah, don't be bounded. That's what I want to say.
Cool. I just want to
Okay.
clarify one thing. I moved my other screen here, so when I look at, I'm looking like this. I'm reading the chat, right? So it's not like I'm ignoring you. So
Yeah. Yeah. Same with
just
me. If
wanna
you guys see me looking that way, I'm actually looking at the PowerPoint and getting us ready for the next thing.
Yeah, same with me.
It's not a
I'm just
phone.
here.
Yeah. All right. So going on to that, let's go on to our next subject because we're going to run out of time fast. We got a lot to cover. So the next subject here is speed of learning, right? Last week, if you guys were with us, we talked about like the floodlight and laser beam. The floodlight idea was, hey, I'm drawing the model, but I'm thinking about an argument with my boyfriend or girlfriend, or I'm really hungry, I'm thinking about video games or whatever it might be, instead of the focus on the model. And then there's laser beam, meaning, you have one focus and therefore you learn more quickly. Well, I think the same thing kind of happens with being self-taught versus being mentored, right? So floodlight, you're out on the internet, you're trying to learn on your own, and therefore that means you're not really necessarily sure what to look at, right? So you might all of a sudden start juggling lots of different topics. And I think with the laser beam in general, I think with mentoring or going to a school, you're given a curriculum, right? Somebody's taken the time to schedule out and figure out what you're going to learn, right? So let's talk about that a little bit more, right? What are you guys thoughts on all this?
I feel
Yeah,
like there's. Oh, go ahead,
sorry.
Ricky. Yeah, all they talking, me myself talking. You go.
There's like something with the mentor and with the mentorship, and it is something like, as Mike says, we have like a specific schedule and personalized schedule. We can design like really really quickly, for you to grow as fast as you can. And the thing is, there's something like with the mentorship. So if you're like, for example, you're self-taught and you're like searching for like 10 years, like for example, let's take force. Okay, so in maybe like in 10-year period, you're able to find yourself, without ever heard about whether without hearing about force in like 10 years, you're able to find out, yeah, what the force is, how to use this, and yeah, that, then that. But it is something already that is like discovered by someone. Okay, so this is something, where you'll literally like waste your time. Okay. And so the smartest way to do it, how to learn it, is you just like can, take mentorship or something, and just learning by them. So that's like my dollar worth. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I always think like the analogy of a helping hand. It's like when you're trying to do whatever you're trying to do. Let's get out of drawing. Whatever you want to do. If now the example is YouTube right now. If your coffee machine breaks and you look for in YouTube, you look for how to fix my B42 coffee machine, and then you will have somebody who have been there before. His coffee machine broke and he find out a way to fix it. So how long it will take you to fix it if you already have the answer there? So you grab that helping hand and you fix it way faster, right? With drawing, it's exactly the same. You can figure out things like Swanley says. You can figure out things. You can figure out force. Eventually, if nobody heard about force anymore, there's gonna be somebody somewhere that thinks just like Mike, and eventually, do you believe that could happen?
Ciao, Diego.
Okay, so but let's imagine that somebody out there could figure out force again, like from the scratch, and call it like, I don't know,
Energy.
Energy. Okay. And you have your other brand. So energy,
Exactly.
you call it energy, and well, He find it out. Like how many years it took you? Like 200 years. But maybe if you join force, for example, and you get mentored by Mike, Mike could explain everything you spent 200 years in find out in 2 minutes. I hope
Yeah,
in 2 minutes, but
2 minutes, man.
you
Two
get the
minutes with
idea.
me. That's all it takes.
And
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
not like that is not being limit. Sorry, again I'm interrupting you, but that is not like being limited to something, to education. Now you can learn the force, and then you can use it in your own way, to develop something by yourself, and that would be called a helping hand, not being bounded by it. Yeah. Sorry.
yeah, absolutely. To me, to have somebody who can help you in the process of whatever, it's better. It's always better.
Yeah, it
But
saves you
you
time.
always need to be helpful. Sorry, go, Sonny.
No, I'm just agreeing with you. Like, why try to find, like, use the example of the coffee machine. Imagine how much time it would cost you if you were just like stubborn and say, no, I want to find out this all by myself, And I think another thing might be money, finances. People might think, is it worth it? And of course, you need to make sure that you find a good mentor. But I would say the investment of money, no matter how much it is, compared to the time, compared to the time that it saves you, it's always worth it. I can tell that from experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. I speaking from my own stingy experiences, I'm usually pretty frugal, believe it or not. It's taken me years to figure out, sometimes it's worth paying the money, because there's nothing more valuable to any of you, including me, than your time. Time is the one thing that you can never buy back. No matter how wealthy you are or how poor you are, you cannot buy it back. And if you're willing to put the money down for art school or mentoring, the reason you're paying for those things is because somebody else did take the time to design a program, right? To learn the things that they're going to share with you. And I could tell you, and I've said this before in other videos, I would not be here today if it wasn't for the people that mentored me. No way. I'm not smart enough to have figured it all out on my own.
Yeah, here's one more thing, Mike.
No way.
Supporting what you just said is
Yeah.
don't be ashamed of getting taught. Like,
Yeah, getting help.
there's no shame in that. You didn't born with all the knowledge, and somebody has more knowledge than you because I don't know. He studied before. He discovered things. He can show you the way. So.
Right.
If somebody teach you, it's okay. Then you have to develop the skill because we have many students, and not all of them end up learning how to draw. And that's not because we are bad teachers or something. It's 50-50. I teach you, you understand, practice, and develop your skills. It's not magic. It's not 100% the teacher. So whatever you learn, whoever you learn, that's good. You can say, I'm learning with this or I'm learning with that. It's not a shame. It's a
Yeah.
good thing. You're
I have
wise
to
enough to choose somebody.
I
Yeah,
have
go
to say,
ahead.
I mean, I just had a conversation with a mentee of mine this past week, and this particular student, she has been working with me for, I don't know, maybe 18 weeks or 20 weeks. She bought like a 36-pack session on the site. And I look at her drawing and I'm like, you realize you've only spent 36 hours with me, right? It's 1 hour a week that she spends with me. And then she goes and does the homework. And it's up to her, right? Is she going to put in 5 hours a week of work or 30 hours a week? That's up to the student. But if I take that back to when I was in school, I mean, I was in drawing classes. I would have 2 major drawing classes every week, and they were 6 hours each, right? So there's 12 hours with a teacher in the room with me. And she has gotten up the delta between where she was when she started and where she is with me in those, let's say, 18 weeks is the same thing that probably took me 2.5 years in art school, right? So I try to remind myself and the students, like, wow, you don't understand how fast you're actually moving, right? Because I'm on top of you with it, right? Like, you're doing this right, you're not doing this right. Like, you need to move on to this. This is what needs to be fixed. You need to put more focus on this. Like, I didn't have that in art school, right? I was in a room with 25 other students, right? So I try to remind people, because I have a lot of students come in and they're like week 10 or 11. I thought I would have learned this, or this already. It's like, you realize how fast you're moving. Like, art school is a 4-year thing, right? It's usually a 4-year program, and you've got all these classes that you're trying to juggle. And here in the mentorship, I mean, I've had guys go through 36 weeks, and man, they're almost learned as much as I did in 3 years worth of time. Like, that's just how driven they are. And you know, granted, I think what helps it is the narrowness of the vision, in a sense, right? It's like, I'm going to teach you how to draw. You go to art school, you got painting and draw, you know, you got painting and composition, all this other stuff. And I do some of that as well with the students I have. We'll talk sometimes about painting and rendering, composition, storyboarding, animation, like all these other subjects. But it's fast. I have to say, it's fast. It's so much faster. And if you think about, I don't know what like an annual would be at drawingforest.com for mentoring. Let's say it's $10,000, right? Just for argument's sake, it's $10,000. That's nothing in comparison to the art schools, and it's a lot faster. And by the way, we're not doing this. I'm starting to feel the sense of myself feeling like, oh, I'm creating an ad for mentorship on drawingforest.com. That's not my point here, right? Our point is really to keep this as an open conversation, but I'm sharing with you what I've seen just through me mentoring on drawingforest.com, that I'm actually really impressed myself and amazed that we can even teach drawing through the internet. There was a time where I didn't believe in that, by the way, years ago. I didn't. The only reason I'm even doing it online is because somebody paid me to do it for their school. So I was like, all right, I'm getting paid to do it. I'll see if it works. If I could teach somebody how to draw through the internet, and it worked, right? So that's why I'm here. And just how fast it actually does work. And to Swenley's point, you know, sometimes you got to put the money down. That's why you pay for art school. That's why you pay for mentoring, right? It's because you're going to save a lot of your life, literally your life's time, to get out there and accomplish the things you want to do. And if the rite of passage is learning how to draw for, let's say, the job you want, or if you want to do fine art, or even a hobbyist, then you got to put in the work and the time and typically the money to get the education. You know, what happens when you don't and you go on YouTube is you don't know what to look at, right? So that mere fact of doing that slows you down. Like when I usually research things when I buy something, especially if it's a bigger ticket item. Like I'm looking at mattresses right now. Let's take that example. I'm looking at mattresses. I kind of have a breaking point of like, all right, I've looked at enough. This is a waste of time. I just got to pick one, right? Because at least if I pick one, I can like move forward. I can try them out, right? I can say, okay, I don't like this one, send it back. I'll try this one, right? I'm going to iterate. I'm going to experiment, and which I will be doing, by the way. But when I'm in that research mode, I kind of have an inner clock, I guess, as to me knowing, this is too much time. I have to now make a decision because I'm wasting time at that point. Somewhere it becomes a waste of time. You kind of have to know what's the right amount of research to do without action before you like take action, you know?
Yeah, and one other thing, Mike, I think it's important that I realized again in my own experience, like when you're self-taught, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what knowledge you're missing. Like you pointed out things in my character design that I was like, oh, on my own, I would have never even thought that I had to consider this aspect of character design. Right. I think that's also a major plus for having a teacher or a mentor.
Yeah, and what you don't know, somebody else might know, right? So take Swenley, and he's out there looking for character design work, but he doesn't have a mentor, let's say. And then art directors at a game company look at it, they do know, right? So they're like, oh, I see what this guy does not know. I don't want to hire him. I'm looking for the guy who knows the things I know, or who's even better. When I was an AD in the game industry, I was looking for people that are better than me, right? I want better than me, right? You were going to say something, Diego?
Yeah, I was going to say about the practice. Like sometimes you feel it's like gym, like when you pay the gym to go there and you feel like obligated to do the exercise, instead of if you buy a machine for your house and you start training in your house and then you just do the first 2-3 days and just leave it there. But the thing is, if you go with that mindset to a mentorship or to start a course or something, that if you pay, that's gonna keep you motivated, that's not a good stuff. To me, if you enroll in any type of learning, just break it. Find the way to destroy yourself where you learn, so you can get the best feedback ever. If I just do something and, hey, Mike, can you critique this? And it's something that I did in 1 second. I didn't try to fix it or do my best. Then Mike is going to say, oh, but this is, you're grabbing the pencil on the opposite side. and that's all I get. And I know, Micah, but I was hurry. That's not
Right.
worth it. That's not worth it. I remember when I take my first force course with Mike, he said, like, in the first class, give your 100%. So anything I say to you is gonna increase that. You came here with 100%, and I just, the little thing I said is going 101, and just you're better. You're already better. So if you just give your work like 80% or 90%, maybe your teacher is going to give you that 10% you already know, but you didn't have enough will to fix it before you send that work. So be aware of that. It's not the teacher only, it's yourself wanting to learn.
Yeah, this isn't one of the topics for today, but I want to just add a little to that. And that is, I think a really, really huge difference that I did not put in the deck that's really worth mentioning is just drive and responsibility and obligation, right? When you're on your own, you're on your own. And I don't care what anybody says, the truth of the matter is most of us don't have enough drive to just do things by ourselves. It takes a lot of commitment to be responsible to yourself and create your own schedule and say, I'm going to stick to the schedule. I'm going to draw every morning. It's not to say people don't have it. There's some people that are here right now in the chat that I know are extremely driven individuals, and that's pretty rare. Okay, that's very rare. Most of the time, people are not like that, and that's also a big benefit of why you go to school or you get mentored by someone, is because you're like, oh shit, I got to see Mike next week on Wednesday afternoon. He told me to do this homework. Like, I got to go do it, even if it's your own embarrassment that drives you to do it. Great, at least you're embarrassed to show, to not show up with anything, and you're going to do it, right? You got to do the job until you get trained well enough to almost be mature enough to schedule yourself and control your schedule and be responsible. And that's just, we're not like that. I just think human nature is not, even me. I mean, if it wasn't me being responsible to all the people I mentor, I'd rather be sitting here watching TV all day long and playing video games. That's what I'd be doing. I wouldn't be doing the job. I'm responsible to you guys. It gets me up, and I make my computer every day at 9 a.m., right? It's like work that keeps me active and keeps me going, So I think that's a huge benefit, actually, to having a school program or mentorship versus you just doing your own thing. I think there's probably a million artists out there that go on YouTube, they learn stuff. 3 years, 5 years from now, they'll get a job somewhere doing something else. It won't be art. They'll tinker around on the side, and the end. That's it. We'll never hear from them. We'll never see them. We'll never know how awesome they could have been, right? Because they didn't invest in the time of an education, that really like drove them to excel, All right, I'm actually let's go back to our deck. I think I'm going to skip over one because of the sake of time and try to move on to one I think is a little more important. Let's go to screen share here again. Okay, I'm going to skip over how to learn. We've talked a little bit about this in the past. Just very quickly, it's just the idea of process. What you get through teachers is some kind of like thinking process, right? We talked about this last week. I mentioned the idea even of like the scientists like we have here, or being a journalist or a detective. It's understanding, I teach hierarchy. That's a huge principle to how I teach. So that's like the main thing here. I think when you're on your own, you don't necessarily know how to learn, like what are the best ways to learn, that there's actually systems in place to do that also, okay? So I'm gonna move us forward because this is one I find is even bigger. It's a bigger friction point that I find with people that I teach on the website. So let's talk about this. The next big thing is, like, again, the difference between self-taught and being mentored is, what to learn and when to learn it, right? So how does what to learn and when to learn get differentiated between, doing it on your own versus having somebody, guiding you, right? So let's talk about that.
Well, there's no way to start if you don't know where to start, right?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to start in the wrong place, because you just don't know. You just don't know. It's like when we start talking about inspiration, it's like you watch some artist you like and you want to go there, but you don't know where to start. It's like building a house. If you don't know how to build a house and you start like making a wall, just let's make a wall. Everything's going to fall right away, because you don't start with a wall in a house. So the same thing to me, and I'm really passionate about this subject, is how you start to learn without hitting breakpoints. Like, oh, I'm stuck here. I cannot move. Why I cannot move? So a good mentor or a good teacher or a good process will drive you through the place, through the process of learning in the best way possible, at least for the idea of that teacher. So you need somebody who have developed and tried many times during years to find a way to move through things, right? Because once again, if you just do it by yourself, then you will find your method to learn how to draw. I'm sure of that. Everybody will have their method to learn how to draw. But if you find something, like Mike said before, it's enough time of looking. Like already, I search for metrics all around, and okay, pick one and try it. And if you find that it's not working, it's not working. Okay, try another one. If you find it's not working, try another one until you find one that you go seamlessly through that process. And to me, that's the most important thing about teacher or mentoring instead of self-taught, because you're wasting, once again, to Swanley's what Swanley said before, you're wasting time, and time is super important. Someone asked in the chat, am I too old to learn? Never. You're never too old to learn, but as you get older, the time is ticking, right? You will fight with people younger than you, because if you want to get in the industry, you will be competing no matter what. Somebody can do something, you can do something. Who can do it better? Who can do it faster? Who can have more knowledge about it? That's who gonna pick. If you just want to draw because you want to draw, just do whatever you want. Just draw. But if you want to work, if you find this as a profession, you need to spend time learning. And what if you can speed up that process? That would be better. That's my 2 cents on this.
Yeah, you know, I'm writing notes here as you're talking, and I think when it comes to, you know, what to learn and when, the biggest mistake, I'm going to use that word, that I see is people are out there and they're being self-taught, right? They're scouring YouTube, and the main challenge they're up against is knowing what the right order of things are, right? So, you know, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but most artists go out there and they're like, I want to learn anatomy. Why?
Because they
Right?
want to be doctors. They want to be doctors.
I know, I guess so. Either you want to be a doctor, you want to be a physical therapist. I don't know, right? But the first thing to learn is how to draw, right? Not anatomy. How can you draw the anatomy if you don't know how to draw, right? So the first thing you need to learn how to do is draw. So I get students to come to me all the time with like, yeah, I learned anatomy, or I learned how to render. Like, why? How can you even learn how to render? You don't know how to draw. Rendering is based on knowing how to draw, right? You have to know how to draw form in order to understand how light and shadow affect those forms, right? So, you know, most time people come to me and they're going backwards. They're literally going backwards, right? They're starting at the tail end and working their way back. And to our point earlier about the value of your time, I'm not going to say you wasted all that time, because there's things you learned, and you can come back to those things you learned, but it's really the wrong order. I've said this even to Stan, right? I've said, you know, Stan, what I really want the world, and I mean Stan Prokopenko or Proko, what I really would love is for the world to know, like, this is actually step number one. Come to drawingforce.com. This is step number one, right? Because we're going to take you from the ground up, teach you how to draw, right? Teach you how to draw, understanding function and rhythm in the body. Those are really important things, because it's not just about the figure. All of us are trying to teach you to understand how things work. And we're using line as a tool of language, right? It's much broader. To me, it's much broader than these figure drawings that you see behind me. It's much bigger than that. You know, it's how you're thinking, what you're thinking about, how you're explaining that through the art of using line. After that, you move on. You know, like I teach, after I teach someone the drawing aspect, the skill of it, I'm able to teach someone storyboarding, character design, art direction, animation, right? These are all things that I know how to do myself. I've done them as a profession. And I can teach people those other skills. There's some things I don't teach. I say, you know what, you want to learn how to do digital painting? I'm okay at it, but there's guys that are so much better than me, and I point you to the people that I think are better, you know? If you want to learn rendering, I can teach you rendering. I don't like teaching rendering. So I would teach you to other places. I would focus. I'd say, go to Stan. Stan's a freaking amazing renderer. Amazing, right? He's really clear. His education's amazing. Go to Stan, like go learn that, right? But man, be aware if you're going backwards. You don't start with the small stuff. You start with the big stuff first. Don't go to the details. Anatomy is a detail. You know, you want to learn how to draw, right? Like learn how to draw first. So, you know, I think there was a note, somebody out there said, you know, I think it was Kevin. So do we have to be overcharged for mentoring by these guys? First of all, there's a judgment in there about the idea of being overcharged. I'm not sure what overcharged or undercharged really means, but you know, the prices are what the prices are. We all have to survive and live in this day and age, right? And if it's going to save you 2 years of your life, it's probably even worth more than what we charge, quite honestly, right? You're going to be saving time in your life to be able to get from A to B. It's worth it. I would say it's worth probably even double of what we charge, quite frankly. Not to talk about money here too much, but I really do think it is, because I've seen how fast people learn, and I know what I had to go through school. So,
and it's a choice. Like it's a choice.
Yeah.
No one is obligating you to do anything. You know, if you want us to help you, fine.
Right.
If you want someone else, it's fine also. It's a
Yeah,
choice.
that's exactly right. Yeah, you have total choice as to, you know, and I think going to the mattress analogy before, I think you should do your research, right? It's like, what do I want to learn and who do I want to be taught by? Don't spend forever doing that. You shouldn't spend 6 months doing that. Maybe there's a couple of weeks of you doing research and figuring out who's out there and who's going to be the best mentor for you, you know? And lots of people do that, by the way. They come to me, they'll pay for one session as like a trial, right? They'll come in and I'm like, you know, and I ask them right at the beginning, is your intention for this to be a trial because you're looking for more mentorship, or are you here today because you want me to just look at your work and give you some advice and you're on your way? 99% of the time it's, I'm here because I want to feel this out. I've never done this before. I want to see what it's like. And I would say 99% of the time they then continue because they see, okay, wow, this is what it's like. This is what I was looking for. I get along with this guy. He understands me, you know, meaning that I actually understand where they're coming from, which again, majority of the time I do. I've been through all the stuff you guys have been through. I didn't, you know, I wasn't born like this. Like you know, it's taken me years and years and years to learn how to draw and to teach the way that I teach. So I think that having a connection, I think, is really important with that person. I was, you know, the people that taught me, I was very good friends with, you know. So I think it's really important that you get that connectivity, you know, going as well, and that you understand, you agree with what they're talking about. And I want to add one other thing there is this whole idea of trust. You know, like you have to get to a place where you trust the person that's teaching you, because if you don't trust them, you don't really buy into like what they're talking about, then it just doesn't work, you know. And I've seen students go through that too, and them actually admit to me, like, for some reason, I'm like, why is this taking longer than usual for this student to understand this thing? And I know they're smart, I know they get it. And then all of a sudden, like a week or two later, they're like, you finally said this thing where I just finally trust what you're saying. I've been holding on to the way that I think. And I had a hard time like turning that corner and really believing what you were talking about, you know. Again, I've been there. What I did when I was going to school is I wholeheartedly trusted. I was always willing to give myself entirely over to the teacher's program. I trusted myself enough to be flexible and know if I really disagreed, I could pull out. You know, I'm not committed for life. So I'm here, I'm paying for this guy to teach me, I'm in this class, I'm going to give myself over, right? Like I'm going to do exactly what you're asking me to do. I'm going to ask you a ton of questions. I want to understand you as best as I can and get as much as I can out of this person before I leave and they're not teaching me anymore. You know, I don't think you can do much better than that as a student and as a teacher. You know, you're trying to really gain somebody's trust, you know.
I think we all have a switch. I think we all have a switch, like a learning and showing off. So when you take a class, put that switch in learning. Don't try to show off anything. You're paying somebody to help you learn not you're not paying to show off. Oh, I'm going to start studying with Diego, and I will show him how good I draw. I really
Right.
don't care. It's like,
Right.
okay, you can draw well. You can. I'm going to try to help you move up your current level. It's that thing. So if you're trying to show off against the teacher, just the word against, just is not teaching. It's not learning.
Yeah.
It's fighting. And
Yeah, it's that
and
humility, right? You have to come in with
yeah,
the humility of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
exactly.
So, we talked about the so to frame up this slide, this topic, what to learn and when. I think what you don't get by yourself is you don't know the order, right? That's what I was talking about before. You go out there and you waste a lot of time, quite frankly, like bouncing around YouTube trying to figure out what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? Like what am I supposed to do here? And I think that's a big problem, quite frankly.
No,
And yeah.
yeah, sorry. Just one of the experience I want to share, with my experience, in when I was in school. So I was like really interested in, again, drawing and all that. So my teacher said, yeah, if you just want to go to fine arts, and that time I was planning to go into fine arts, not into animation. So my teacher said, yeah, you want to learn like anatomy, like fine arts, and anatomy is like so important for it. But at that time, and when I was introduced to force, I was in first grade, first year of my college. Okay, so it's like 2 years, like I've been 3 years, 2 years I've been working anatomy. And I actually have like a little drawing, like sketchbook from that time, if you can see it. So yeah, I'm doing this for my like school life.
Yeah, you were
Like,
going to become a doctor. That's pretty awesome.
yeah. So, but if I was introduced to force at that time, literally like say I will be much better at this point. So yeah, but when I like, but fortunately, it's like better late than never, right? And now I'm here. And I'll be like much better if I would be, knowing the right place for that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's be so
All right,
better.
we've got about 10 minutes left. Thank you, Mrityunjay. I'm going to move us to our last slide here.
Yeah.
Let's see, new screen. Okay, so the last thing we want to discuss is when to move forward, right? I'd say that's the really other big benefit I think that I try to at least share with the people I mentor and the premiums on our site. It's one thing to go out there when you're self-taught and learn, first of all, and have the ability and the commitment to learn by yourself, which I think is a big deal. And again, I think that's pretty rare. But if you're able to do that, man, that's amazing. Then you're a pretty driven individual. But I'd say the other challenge is, even if you're doing that, is knowing like, okay, I really understand this enough, right? Like I really get it. Now I should move forward. And even when you do know when to move forward, as we just talked in the prior slide, yeah, but what's next, right? So I think I'd like us to close off today, I guess, with a conversation about like when to move forward. What does that look like when you're self-taught versus what does that look like when you're being taught, right?
What
Anyone?
if everyone stays silent?
I was
Certainly,
looking
people
at
are
the chat.
asking in the chat for you to speak. Come on, Certainly.
I
Look
was
at
reading the chat. Yeah, now okay, so this subject is one of the like major things I think that we see with students is they wanted to move from subject to subject too fast, or sometimes learning too many things at once before really taking the time to delve deep and really understand one thing and then move on to the next, because I keep telling them the order in which we teach is important because each subject prepares you for the next, and if your foundations are weak, everything you stack on top of that is just going to put pressure on that foundation, and eventually it's going to crack, and you will have to
Yeah.
go back to fix it.
Yeah, it's a great metaphor for the whole thing, You kind of just keep piling it on and you move ahead too fast, but you don't have enough of the skills at the very beginning, then the whole thing kind of falls apart, And it's almost like you compound the problem, right? You basically compound the problem.
Yeah.
And you move forward with these cracks that never really get fixed. And quite honestly, I mean, that's how a lot of style is developed, right? Because I personally think my definition of style is style in art is what you know and also what you don't know. Right? Like there's certain things you just don't know and you never focused on it, you didn't care to, that determines your style and what you know. So the combination becomes, your thing. But at the beginning, especially the beginning, that's probably the most important step. That's where you want to create as strong a foundation as possible. You know, do I know force, right? Do I understand fluidity and rhythm? Do I know how to think about function and how things work in this world, not only human beings or animals, but machines, cars, whatever it may be? Do I understand perspective, right? Structure, form, right? Really important. So many people try to move forward and they don't know how to do that well, maybe like 20%, right? Man, you start piling stuff on and you don't know structure, forget it, right? People end up going, their style becomes about two-dimensionality and flatness, right? And you can tell when somebody designs two-dimensionally but understands perspective and form, and when they do it without that knowledge. And the pros know it. Let me tell you, I've been in plenty of meetings. I have lots of friends that work in the TV animation industry and, you know, feature animation, and especially in TV. They would point out to me all the time, one of their biggest arguments with some of the schools were letting students get away with the idea of two-dimensional drawing and not understanding that that would come from three-dimensional skill, right? And how to do that well. I don't know if you guys know who John Kay is. I forget how to pronounce his last name. It's like Chris Falowski or something like that. But I had lunch with him a couple of times in LA in the mid 2000s. And man, that was his pet peeve, that when blogs were big, he was hitting the blog like every day, frustrated with the lack of structural education coming out of the drawing schools. He's a guy who created like Ren and Stimpy as an example, right? He was the director of that. So yeah, he was super frustrated, and I agree with him. I think, you know, it's an embarrassment, I think, for schools to churn out students at the price of art education, which, by the way, on average at art schools now is almost around $50,000 a year, right? And not get you really good teachers that teach you skills. Now, in their defense, it's not all their fault if you don't come out learning what you're supposed to learn, right? You need to be a responsible student, right? As you know, Diego was saying before, we had the conversation about humility. You have to be humble and come in there and be willing to learn, do all the work, you know, show up to class on time, do all the homework, listen to what the teacher's doing, be respectful in class, smart enough to ask the right questions, right? It's all these different things that it takes to be a good student. So it's not all in the schools, but there are times where it is their responsibility, it's their fault if you don't leave there with the right things, you know?
Yeah,
So,
and what also happens is that students then come out thinking that their problem is the subject matter. Then they're like, oh, I'm better drawing hands, or I'm better drawing facial expressions. But the problem often is just a lack of basic drawing and design skills. That's it. You know, I keep telling students, if you learn how to draw, how to design, you don't have to worry about style or subject matter. You can do anything that you want. You know, it frees you up.
yeah, I would add, yeah, I say this sometimes on my workshop. If me and all the other drawing instructors on the planet Earth all disappeared, my last note on a piece of paper would be draw blindly, because I think the first thing is you need to know how to see, right? Learn how to see. You got to get your brain to stop lying to you, and you just got to see what the world looks like. And then if you're clever enough and we're not there, you understand, well, I don't just want to copy what I see. Now I know how to draw truth, right? I can see and copy visually. But can you draw with the knowledge, the skill to say, I want to try to see if I can turn this seeing into me drawing the way things work and how they function. I want to try to draw with an understanding of the things that I see, right? And, you know, a lot of that doesn't happen, And going back to our topic of like when to move forward, I think when you're self-taught, one of those challenges is you don't know if you see clearly enough, how much you're seeing or not seeing. You know, do I know perspective well enough to move forward? Are there other subjects within perspective or structure I'm not aware of, right? Because the education's kind of all over the place. And again, that's why you pay, you know, that's why you pay the prices you pay for school, or, you know, or websites like our own, or tons of the other ones that are out there, is, you know, with the hopes of having somebody who's gone through that process themselves and understands how to develop systems that are going to help you learn how to draw faster, you know?
Yeah, it's like a trained eye, but to go back to the topic of when to move forward, I like to tell the students, like, if you don't know if you're ready to move forward, then you don't know enough to that in that subject. You know, you will know if you draw in a box, for example, and you don't know, is this box correct or it isn't. If you're doubting, then you don't know enough. You should keep learning that subject. Imagine if you have a teacher or a mentor that can tell you that is correct, then you know that is correct, but you need to keep practicing because you still don't know. You cannot tell. So if you cannot tell right there if that is correct, then you still don't know enough to move forward to the following part of your learning process, right? Like Swanley says, you're piling up things. If you don't know if this is really solid already, don't put anything on top of that, because that is not solid. And maybe it's not, how you say when you put cement and get hard,
Hmm.
how you call that
Yeah, it gets
process?
hard. It firms up. It
Okay.
dries. Whatever you
If
want to
it's
call it.
not dried or hard enough yet, if you put something on top, what's going to happen? Everything's going to go down. So let them dry, let them be solid, and then you put something on top of that, and trust me,
Right.
your castle is going to be super hard. Is nobody going to tear it down.
Right.
So that's how you know when to move forward. If you
Yeah.
have a teacher, of course, that faster.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
they don't know
nothing.
there's
Yeah, go
like a
ahead.
structure inside it, before putting on the cement or something. How solid or how bold the structure should be there, right?
Yeah. I noticed there was a comment there. I forget what I was going to say, but I noticed that someone said Marshall, Marshall said that education is a creative endeavor. I agree with that 100%. I think education is not just literally like learn this and do, learn and do, learn and do. I think the creative aspect of learning is knowing how you learn, being creative within the space of learning and how to navigate through it. You have to be a sort of smart, creative individual, I think, to learn well and learn quickly. I mean, look at last week, right? I shared with you again all these different metaphors to, hey, you can act like this or act like this or act like this. Like, it took my creativity to come up with me acting as a detective or a scientist or whatever, right? Like, I had to invent this shit. Nobody taught me that. I had to come up with this stuff to help me learn, right? Not like we all learn the same, but for me that really worked. I had to put on a different hat to get my brain into a place to keep navigating through a path that was going to be the fastest one for me to get to where I wanted to go. And some people, they just get stuck. They don't. It's called like lateral thinking. It's definitely a thought process that maybe you guys haven't heard of, but lateral thinking means you attack then a problem from all different kinds of angles. You try to come in with the one, and I do that as the teacher. If I come in with one angle, if I see that's not working with a student, I'm like, hey, think of it like this, 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 think of it like this. And I just keep doing that and doing that and doing that until something's going to break through the barrier, through the fortress. And all of a sudden the student's like, oh, yeah, that thing you said, that makes sense to me. Even if it's after 10 other options I've thrown at them, I'm going to keep hammering at that wall of misunderstanding or not understanding until I poke a hole in it, right? And then the student's like, I get it. And I can see that because the next week they come in with their homework and I'm like, holy shit, you got it, right? And they're like, yeah, you said this particular thing and that really clicked with me, right?
Yeah, we as
So,
teachers just show you process. Our process, my process, Bandroff process, stamp process. Every one of us find a process to show you how to learn, and that's because you don't have a process. So you might as well
right.
take ours, right, and try it.
Right.
It's a process we created.
So we're here at the end. I think in closing, what I wanted to share more than anything with you guys is, I think when you're self-taught, one of the biggest benefits to being self-taught, I think, is you have the opportunity to find your individuality, but it's at the risk of not really knowing how to draw well. It's at this risk of not having the skill to find it. So in a way, you do become more individual because of what you know and what you don't know, as I was saying before. I think it's a little harder to find individuality when you're in school and you're going through training, even with us, and I'm aware of that, by the way. I'm aware of like, oh, I'm teaching them this thing. I want to make sure they don't think I'm teaching them a style. I think it's a longer road to find yourself. And I've had to go through that, but I think the longer path is the better path. I have to say, I think you learn the skills, you get the foundation, you learn how to draw well, and the whole world of art respects that. Everyone knows. You can look at someone and just go, damn, that person knows how to draw well, or they don't. And I think the best of the best out there have that as a foundation. No matter what kind of style they put on top of that, they have that skill. And I do think teaching, being taught, if it's at school or mentored by someone, it's faster. I think there's no argument to that. You know, I've taught thousands of people all around the planet, and you know, going it your own, it's cheaper. It's cheaper, obviously, it's cheaper. But man, does it take a lot longer, and you just don't know if you're on the right track or not. It takes time. If you've got the time, you don't have the money, but you have the time, be self-taught, right? Like, I didn't have the time. I had the money, fortunately, when I was in school, so I could do it. I didn't have, you know, and I didn't have the time. I was trying to get into animation. I was trying to get in a certain window and comics, and I had the money to do it. Fortunately, I was very lucky in that way. And that got me through very quickly, right? I mean, I got out of school, 1 year out of school, I was working on Lion King, right? So I was very, very fortunate. Not everyone has that ability. If you don't, man, scour the internet. You know, there's a ton of great education out there. YouTube is amazing. I think it's amazing.
Yeah,
The
Mike, to
trick
give you
is,
some support on that,
yeah,
you can be yourself and be self-taught and do all the research you want, but trust me, when you get a mentor or you get a teacher, you'll say, "Oh, why I didn't hear that before? I
yeah,
wasted so much time. It was so
yeah.
easy." It's like inventing perspective. You want to invent perspective? Be yourself. Invent
Right.
perspective. It's already out there. You know, you can really learn it fast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I want to close. Go ahead, Swanley. I have one thing I want to close with after you.
Oh no, I want to say I can literally back Diego up on that, because for myself, I mean, I've noticed the fastest amount of growth when being mentored by you, to the point I was like, I knew that having a mentor had its benefits, but I was like, wow, I seriously underestimated this, you know.
Yeah,
And we're telling you guys this because it's the truth. We have all experienced it.
yeah. I wanted to close with the line that keeps coming up in my head is from Yoda. And he says, you know, you have to unlearn what you have learned, right? And I think a challenge with being self-taught is when you go out there and you learn all these things in the wrong order. When you come to me or you come to another educator, sometimes you actually waste more time, not only on the fact that you went down a road and the wrong road, but now you have to unlearn what you've learned to get back to zero, where your head's clear enough to pick up the new thing again. And that's time again spent, right? So if you're going to go self-taught, right, you don't have the money, let's say, to be, you know, to be trained by somebody, my recommendation would be spend some time at the beginning doing the research on the types of education, the type of artists that are out there. Find the one or ones that you like, but I would try to minimize that. I wouldn't have like 10 different teachers, maybe 2, 3 max, really, and then just focus on them and dig deep so you can move forward as quickly as you possibly can. So, and we're here for that, obviously, as well. If you like what we talk about and you like the idea of force drawing, you know, we're here for that. We're here to help you dig deep and go fast, right, and learn, you know, what we're teaching. Okay, I have to go, unfortunately. Thank you guys. Thank you, Mrityunjay, Diego, and Swenley, for all of your sound advice today. Thanks, guys, for coming to this Force Friday session. We'll see you next Friday, right? Take care, guys. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Great weekend.
Yes, have a good
Bye.
weekend. Bye bye.
See you.
All right, bye-bye, guys.